Meltdown versus Shutdown. So today's topic is meltdowns versus shutdowns with autism spectrum disorder. So once again, these terms are used quite interchangeably, I've realised, and in my perspective they're quite different. So I'm going to once again try and explain the difference between them. So I've noticed in general with people on the spectrum, their reactions to life in general are fairly black or white. So where many neurotypicals have the ability to actually react in the grey area of the emotional reaction spectrum, people on the spectrum tend to react either at one end or the other. So by one end I mean, this is very verbal, yelling, outbursts, very intense, extreme, explosive at one end. And at the other end you've got completely internalizing something, no communication, completely silent, completely in their own realm, drawing all that attention inward. So this is a completely internal, this is completely external. And as I said, many neurotypicals have the ability to react somewhere along the spectrum in the grey area, whereas many people on the spectrum have the tendency to either react at one end or the other end. That's not saying that it's not interchangeable, so someone that has shutdown may the next time have a meltdown. I'm going to use an old-fashioned power board for a bit of a visual idea on what it's like at either end of the spectrum. So as most of us know, a power board usually has a maximum amount of amps or a voltage that you can load into it before it goes into overload. So if you took 4 plugs of devices that slightly overloaded the power board and plugged them in all at once into an old-fashioned power board, you might get some kind of reaction like a few sparks coming out. You might overheat. I've had one with smoke billowing out of it before I turned around and realised what was happening. So these really old-fashioned ones didn't have a cutoff limit. So if you load 4 plugs into them at once and it overwhelms that amount of voltage that they can handle, sometimes you would actually get quite a notable physical reaction from the board. That to me is like meltdown. So it's like you've gone into a situation, someone's plugged in all 4 plugs at once, they've overwhelmed you with voltage, your body's not quite capable of handling it, and your reaction is quite extreme. So it's intense, it can be quite loud, it can be quite physical, they can be lashing out, so you can get quite, fisty with the hands, screaming, yelling, stimming. For those of you who don't know what stimming is, it's that rhythmic, it can be either a noise or it can be body movements. So when people clap, flap, or all that kind of thing, that's regarded as stimming. There can be humming, a whole load of physical reactions. So at the other end, if you take a more up-to-date power board, so pretend this has a safety switch on it, if you got those same 4 devices and this has the same limit on it, and put them all in at once, it gets overloaded and it shuts all the power off. So it goes into complete shutdown mode. So that is what a shutdown is at the other end of the spectrum. So it is the same amount of overwhelm. It's the same, from an emotional or an energy perspective, it's hit that same limit, but the body's reaction is to internalize that. So the person reacting on the spectrum will perhaps not want to talk, they will want to isolate themselves, they do not want to be touched in most circumstances. They often just retreat, and that is their body's way at that time of dealing with it, and that needs to be respected. So I think the similarities between both reactions are the fact that you've been overwhelmed by certain stimuli, you've hit that limit, and your body has reacted in the way it needs to at the time. And afterwards, you're often very depleted and exhausted. Most people in shutdown and in meltdown do not want to be touched, although the knee-jerk reaction from the people around them is to want to comfort them, because that is a intrinsic human reaction to someone that's in distress. It is actually more distressing for that person in that scenario to be touched, because their skin and their senses are all at peak, and for someone to want to have physical contact or to try and have a conversation with you or communicate with you adds to that stress load. So I think when you're around someone on the spectrum in either scenario, you need to really respect the fact that they need space and they need time. And that time, as I said in the last video, can be anywhere from a few minutes to hours to even days with some people, where they have less communication, less ability to verbalize, less need for bodily contact, until their body has actually put that armour down and taken the guard down, and they can come back to their usual level of communication, or just existence in general. I think that pretty much explains the difference between the two. If you do have any more questions, feel free to ask me, or if you have another topic you'd like me to talk about. I hope that helped. Over and out. Have a good day.